Hello guys, welcome to Shanty Shop Mechanic. My name's Paddy, and in today's episode I'm going to be revisiting this go-kart. I got this thing to run, however it was a bit of a failure with the engine being consistently inconsistent and leaving me stranded on multiple occasions. The engine's coming right off. I'm putting a new engine on. I'm going to get a bit more power from it. I'll do a few little modifications to boost that power, and yeah, hopefully that'll equate to some fun. The engine in question is a flathead Briggs & Stratton. It's about 40 years of age, and it should really be located on a tiller, not a go-kart. I had serviced this thing and put a new little diaphragm in it for the carb, changed the oil, put a new plug in it, and cleaned out the tank, but to no avail. So it's going. I would say I do give Briggs & Stratton a bit of a bad rap. However, these are a really reliable engine, just not this one. But besides, even if it was reliable, it just doesn't have the right amount of power to be able to get this go-kart where I want it to go. So that's why I'm getting the overhead valve engine onto it. The powers of editing and YouTube magic, this engine will now be removed. Oh, would you look at that? So much more room for activities. I know what you're thinking. You saw the thumbnail, you read the title, and you're not much further on than when you started. To bring clarification, this is a Subaru. Is it the Subaru you were thinking? Probably not. I'm just saying that it's a Subaru. Don't get angry with me. It's not clickbait. Being honest, Subaru, so I can say Subaru. Enough disclaimers, it's time to rip this engine off this frame. There's 4 12mm bolts holding this engine on. Have a spanner on top and then the ratchet or your impact, and it'll eventually hit off the engine, so you'll be able to twist the bolts off. The spanner is wedged up against the wheel. That is well and truly stuck in there. Okay, woohoo! 3 bolts survived out of 4. Not bad. The engine is off the frame, however it's not out of the woods just yet, as I have to disconnect it from the water pump. Just a few bolts and then I'll be able to lift this engine right out. Bit of brute force, and it's need to disconnect this hose from the pump, and then I can properly lift this engine off the frame. Time to remove this pump. 4 bolts, so it should be able to come off nice and easy. That was on good. Come on. Might need some gentle persuasion. Excellent. And retain the keyway too. So I have the bare engine off the frame, pump off it too, so with the exposed shaft there. Just time to do a few little repairs, such as on the recoil. If you've seen an episode of Shanty Shop, you'll know that I can't get away without having to do a recoil, so this is no different. Put a new string on it, fill it up with oil, and yeah, just gotta do a few little bits and pieces. See if I can get this thing to run. I'm going to change the string off camera just for the sake of speed. Put it back on. Make sure that the spring doesn't rust and break. Nice and reactive now. Tipped over on its side. It has no oil, it has no fuel in it, so I'm not worried about spilling anything. Inspect the bowl of the carb. A little bit crusty, but not terrible. Time to remove the jets out of the carb. There's one jet here and one in the carb. From looking in at this, it's perfectly clean, so I'm going to put it back in, and to allow more petrol to go in, the diameter of this jet to be widened out just slightly. I've found a drill bit that's just marginally larger than jet hole. That should allow a little bit more petrol in. Don't go overboard with it, because if you throw too much petrol into it, it won't run right. Okay, it's the next day. I went off camera and I took the engine mounts off the old engine and put them onto the new one. It's now time to crack open this case and remove that governor. There's 6 bolts going around the edge of the case. Get the impact and take them off. This impact is useless. Time to do it the old-fashioned way, I guess. Doing a crisscross pattern. Excellent. Oh, you're a fun one. There we go. A little bit of elbow grease. Let's see if you can redeem yourself. So this is where you want to get your little rubber mallet and tap the edges. Don't use a normal hammer, or in my case a lump hammer here, because you can crack the aluminium and then you may as well just throw the engine away. That is really well stuck on there. Pried it off there. You got to be careful when doing this, not to be too ignorant when doing it. After 20 minutes of hammering away, I was able to pry this off. Seems to be fairly loose now. Just use the pry bar of justice here with the hammer, and it off a bolt that I put into the shaft. So not actually hitting the shaft, the full force of the whack by the actual head bolt. Excellent. This is what I have to remove. This is the governor, and you can see when I spin it around, these come out, and this is what actually helps to maintain the rhythm of the engine so it doesn't rev right out and blow up. But we're going to bypass this speed out of this engine. I'm sure there's a prettier method, but what I did was I got a flathead screwdriver and I jammed it into that metal tab here. Little bar is that holds it in, and then pried it out, and then it just should pop out like that. And before you go anywhere, make sure there's no washers or clips around like that that can fall back into the engine and wreak havoc. While we're at this, I'd just like to point out that I haven't actually ever got this engine to start. It was put away in the shed about 5+ years ago, like most of my machines, and never turned on. So I'm really banking on this just working seamlessly. What you're going to want to do now when you're putting the cover back on is to clean off the edges where the two surfaces meet, and you're going to put a nice little layer of silicone, because unfortunately the gasket that came with this has completely just disintegrated. So make sure that you're aware of that might happen to you too. Don't reuse gaskets, just make a new one. Going along all the edges here, and do it to one side. I'm using a high temperature cone for this. You don't need special stuff for it. So I've went around the bolt holes as well, just made sure there's nice silicone going around the perimeter, and I just gave it a very light touch around the edge of the other side. That'll get rid of any of the gouges that I accidentally made with the screwdriver to pry this thing open, or any inconsistencies in the metal too. You're going to want to go in a crisscross pattern. I'm using an impact because this thing is incredibly weak. I would recommend using a ratchet. Leave that to about half an hour to an hour for the silicone that you've put in to set, so then it can actually be oil tight. Wipe off any excess too. I need to call up a mistake that I had made off camera, and it was to do with the O-ring that goes on the shaft and then on the case. It's not very flush, and this will give some oil leakage, but just to let you know that install the case and then put the O-ring on then. Hindsight being 2020, I would have bought a new one instead of using the old one. I'm going to add some Lucas into this to give it its best chance of staying in one piece. Not that I really believe in miracle oils or anything, but it makes me feel better. This looks a little bit extreme, but there's no funnel that I have at the moment that can take an angle like this. The Honda engines, or the Honda clone engines, have a oil filler that comes out further. Even this one here is worse than that one. I'm just going to have to take my time with this. Okay, I think we're there. Oh yes, very good. Good job, Patrick. Not a drop spilled. That's enough to party with. Okay, I got my lovely Subaru engine mounted here. Well, what I mean by mounted, it's not mounted to anything, it's just sitting on a T-tail. I'm going to run it like this. I'd recommend not to do this at all. Bolt it up to the frame and then start an engine, but I'm a little bit impatient and I'm sure I can manage. It's on choke. Not bad. I need to get a throttle return spring though, because if I let go of it, it just takes off. Time to get it onto the frame. It has been that long. I had to get a new clutch and chain because the other one was completely useless and just went flying across into the air. I gotta be honest with you guys, I did have to transport this go-kart to an undisclosed racetrack in Mexico, so if you could do me a favor and like and subscribe, and if you didn't like the video, send it to someone you didn't like. That's what I do. It's awful mucky in Mexico. Subaru engine being water cooled. Uprooted quite a good bit of grass here. Okay guys, I think that's going to call it for this video. And I have to say, this was a soaring success in comparison to the other one, where the engine wouldn't work at all. Got some good drifts out of it. Hope I showed the speed of it. It feels a lot faster than it probably is, but this 8 horsepower engine has complemented this frame quite well. So, as I said before, like, subscribe, and yeah, if you didn't like the video, thank you.